Congressional district work period, and we're here for a very important reason tonight, Mr. Speaker, because on August 9th in Ferguson, Missouri, a young boy, an unarmed young boy by the name of Michael Brown, had his life tragically taken. He was taken from his friends and his family. That community was devastated and has left behind so many questions of how this could have happened. I was honored to join with other colleagues at the invitation of the representative from that area, Mr. Clay, to attend Michael Brown's funeral. It was an incredibly powerful service in which a city and a nation came together to mourn. But out of that mourning and frustration, we have an obligation to act. And so tonight, members of the Congressional Black Caucus will use this special order hour to discuss the challenge of profiling, of militarizing our local law enforcement agencies, and the need to build community policing approaches that work. And I'm honored to work with my co-chair and to lead this special order hour because it's a very significant moment that will allow us to heal and to move forward as a nation. I'd like to start by yielding time to the chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus, who provides so much leadership and direction to the 43 members of the CBC each and every day. And this is an issue that we have been working on far before Michael Brown lost his life. There are a pattern of issues and young people who have been profiled, and we are committed to make sure that this does not continue. So I'd like to yield now to the gentlelady from Ohio, the chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus, Chairwoman Marcia Fudge.
Thank you so very much. I thank you for yielding. And I want to thank my colleagues, Congressman Jeffries and Horsford, for leading today's conversation on a problem that America must acknowledge, come to terms with, and address. And I want to thank them for their leadership. As a freshman member, Mr. Horsford has been outstanding. It is my pleasure to serve with you. Mr. Speaker, in communities across our nation, many believe that police officers sworn to protect and serve are instead disturbingly and violently attacking citizens without just cause. We have heard stories of individuals being shot to death when there is clearly a threat to an officer's safety. We've seen peaceful protesters and journalists on the job arrested, having cans of tear gas shot at them, and guns suited for military combat pointed at unarmed citizens. Over the past few months, cell phone videos and pictures have surfaced showing a policeman kicking subdued civilians in the head, repeatedly punching a woman in the face on the side of a highway, and placing a man in an illegal chokehold when there appears to be no resistance to arrest. Last year in Cleveland, one of the cities I represent, 13 officers fired 137 shots into one car, killing 2 unarmed individuals, and both occupants of the car were shot more than 20 times. The startling images we saw of the police response to civil protests in Ferguson, Missouri, were in stark contrast to the citizens exercising their constitutional right to be heard. Police met peaceful protesters with a force intent on silencing their voices. This excessive use of force often provokes animosity instead of building the cooperation needed to combat violence. The trust between law enforcement and citizens required to keep our communities safe is being eroded by the uncertainty of motives and biases behind the actions officials take, often against those who are powerless yet pay for them to protect them. Instead of keeping the peace, these actions incite tensions where there should be opportunities for understanding. This type of activity must stop. Community policing can only be effective when citizens and leaders, community, law enforcement, and elected officials work together, not against one another, to address violence and unrest. Transparency, Accountability and responsibility must be at the nexus of this relationship. Because of Ferguson, our nation and the world have seen what happens when these principles are ignored or disregarded. I applaud the Department of Justice for initiating full civil rights investigations into this case and others that have resulted in the deaths of civilians at the hands of law enforcement. I also applaud the citizens of Ferguson for realizing that their community belongs to them and that it is up to them to decide with whom they will work to lead it. Just because the cameras are no longer rolling in Ferguson, the recent tragedies we've witnessed there in Staten Island and in other American cities have shown that we cannot keep turning out a blind eye to what is going on between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus remain committed to working with our colleagues on the local, state, and federal level to improve the policies and practices of law enforcement officials across this country so that safety, trust, and confidence can be restored where it has been broken. And I want to especially congratulate my colleague, Mr. Clay, for all of the work that he did during the Ferguson situation and will continue to do. I am as proud of him as I can be of anyone, and I certainly am going to be supportive of his efforts. Mr. Speaker, we cannot move forward together without figuring out what must be done so that what happened in Ferguson never happens again. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, for your ongoing commitment and leadership on these important issues and the recognition that there is so much more work that needs to be done. And while there are local law enforcement agencies and police officers who do a good job every day and who put their life on the line, we know that there are individuals who are not necessarily living up to those standards of safety and trust. And so we look forward to improving that. And I'd like to now yield to the gentleman who provided the leadership on the ground, on the scene, particularly following the days after Michael Brown's shooting. He represents the community of Ferguson in St. Louis, Missouri. The gentleman from Missouri, Representative Lacy Clay.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague from Nevada as well as my colleagues from both sides of the aisle who offered their support during this tragic time in Ferguson. And in particular, let me thank the Congressional Black Caucus for standing with me in our efforts to deliver justice, equal justice under the law to all Americans. Mr. Speaker, I rise today as the congressman from Missouri's 1st Congressional District, which includes Ferguson, Missouri, a suburb with over 23,000 people in St. Louis County. The pain that has enveloped that community since the tragic police shooting of Michael Brown on August the 9th has stirred the conscience of our nation and has forced us to confront some very difficult truths. The hard reality that I observe with my own eyes is a deep sense of outrage and anger that is present not just in Ferguson, but in many communities across this country. And that pain is most deeply felt by millions of Americans of color, both young and old. Who knows from decades of sad experience that far too often local law enforcement agencies and the justice system do not view them or treat them as equal citizens who deserve due process and equal protection under the law. And that is certainly true in Ferguson, Missouri. And according to the latest census data, Ferguson, Missouri is 67% African American. It has a police force of 58 officers. Only 4 of those officers are black. And many of the officers do not live in Ferguson. So in essence, the Ferguson Police Department is an outside armed force, which is not representative of the